indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ron Stevens is not here tonight. This is actually a workshop session. I don't think we're gonna. Do we need people for voting this evening, Jay? Or
The only thing we've got minutes to vote on.
well, that's true.
Beyond that,
so I'm probably going to ask our alternate to fill in for Ron as an alternate member for tonight for voting purposes. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. All right, roll call of members present. Michael Proto, Chair.
Kate Stevens, Vice Chair.
Kimberly Queenan, Selectman's Rep.
Curtis Sampson, member.
James Buffetti, member.
Sam Terrell, alternate member.
Thank you, and good evening. And good evening to Jay Mankara, who's our circuit rider. Tonight, we're doing the workshop, and we're continuing on with the zoning changes. Before I do that, I will open it up to public comment for non-agenda items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment for non-agenda items this evening? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close on non-agenda items and we will go to the workshop. Jay, did you want to lead off?
Yeah, not sure where we want to begin, but maybe we could just start with the simplest one, which was the proposed changes to the floodplain ordinance. I think everybody hopefully got a copy of that. It was really, really incredibly simple. I can certainly call it up. But the gist of the change, this was an issue that Joan brought to our attention at the last meeting. And I've got some proposed, again, incredibly simple language, which hopefully will come right up on the screen. Issue very simply was, it looks like it was an oversight when the ordinance was originally adopted. There was a special exception provision, which you can see in section 1103. And that allowed, it does permit the erection of new or the enlargement of existing, it currently says non-residential buildings and structures. I think pretty clearly the intent was residential, but that would allow, so what this proposed amendment would do would be to correct what we think was an oversight and simply insert the words residential or, so that there's a special, exception provision that applies to both. Pretty simple. And this was one of the things that the new building inspector caught.
Okay, interesting.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
I just don't understand. I just for clarifications for me, it's section 1100 floodplain conservation district.
Right.
So in this section, it's saying that you can erect a new home, right? Is that what that's saying?
By special exception.
By special exception.
Yes. You can't by right, but you can by special exception or enlarge an existing one. There's a lot of requirements that you have to meet, but it does allow it.
That's all I had is why a house would be built in a floodplain. That's what I
Right.
was-
And as I scoot on down, you can see what those
It's set to go 1106, right?
right below special exceptions can be granted, shall meet the following conditions. And then that lists the 5 conditions.
Anybody have any other questions? Nope. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You'd need state permits and yeah, it's not easy to do.
And I haven't seen it in 5 years. Not saying they don't happen.
Yeah.
When you get the encore involved, it's not gonna happen.
It's
I mean, it's a long, drawn-out process.
Right.
So if you had a small amount of property that you wanted to fill in to get it, you have to give them back that same amount of property, basically. So if you wanted to fill in 100 square feet, you got to give them 100 square feet. So, and the flood elevations are all set like around the golf course at 119 and a half. So anything below 119.5 will flood. And then it did a few years ago back, I don't remember what year it was, but we did have, the golf course was flooded and then we came within 2 feet of the clubhouse. The clubhouse is out of the floodplain, but it was close.
Oh.
It got to 119.5.
But what caused the oversight to be brought up, Joan?
Someone's putting an addition
Okay.
on there, public golf course.
Interesting. All right.
So I don't know if it makes sense to jump to the northern commercial zone.
Sure.
So maybe I could just run through the changes. Then obviously, I think this is probably the core of the discussion. In fact, why don't I jump to the, if I could first, just because this might be easier, is that a proposal to limit warehousing. Because I did make some changes to that one. So last time we realized that there was an oversight in the Southwest Commercial District. There was some language missing. And the intent in this district was to restrict warehousing and distribution to accessory uses only. So you could have warehousing and storage so long as it's associated with a permitted use, another permitted use. And what was missing is language under prohibited uses. So here it's clear that, that's the old one. I apologize. That was incorrect. Let me go back and find the most recent one. Oh no, I erased everything.
Oh, well.
All right, I'll come back to that one later then.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Second? No.
It's the second time this has happened to me this evening. See if this is the correct one.
I
One
missed
in the
what
email
happened.
is
What
different.
happened?
Yes, okay. I'm
Erased
sorry.
it?
One of the
I have a
emails
hard
correct
copy.
and I brought it
No,
up.
it was on the screen.
The correct one's up on the screen now. So basically the change was it had referenced kind of the same language that was in the other two districts, which was incorrect. Now what it correctly says is warehouses, fulfillment or distribution facilities, except as permitted under section 701Q. Section 701Q, as you can see right above, is warehousing of goods as an accessory use to permitted uses, if that makes sense. So that was the only change to this language. So I'll shrink that one.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Sorry. When I was looking at it, because this is, you're right, northern is going to be the discussion. When I looked at this one together, a lot of them were kind of the same. Like you have the same ones here that are here, and we're changing some of these maybe tonight. Just like a butterfly effect. If we, like here, you have professional offices, and then you elaborated more.
Oh, you
Here
mean
we-
the
here we
draft
say
last
professional
time versus the
offices.
draft this time?
No, well, I printed the one out. Maybe I have a wrong one, but yeah, like when we get to the northern, and for an example, when we get to the northern commercial zone, when you say professional offices and then you add, you added the pink areas here. Here we also have professional offices, but it just offices, but it's
You just
stopped.
have to update.
So
the wording
I
of
don't know
that
if you want, if we agree whatever on the northern part of town here.
Yeah.
Proposed,
Mhm.
I would, maybe the wording has to be the same if it makes sense.
If
Because
you have this,
most of them, you have like maybe 8 or 9 of the same on both. You just elaborated more on the northern. And I don't know if we have to make.
Oh, you mean in the southern?
Yeah, just make it in the southern.
So we,
So-
I didn't make any changes to the
Yeah, because we're
southern,
gonna do
but we
something
certainly
with this.
could. Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah.
certainly could.
So once this is, solidified with the north, let's, make the wording kind of the same. So,
We could certainly do that.
that's all.
Yeah.
Because you have most of them are almost the
Yeah,
same.
that's a good point.
Okay, so that's, sorry. Move on.
I think a lot of that was done for consistency purposes, so that,
Yeah.
because you have the different districts, but I think the similar language was put in to
that
the.
makes sense.
Yeah, right, and we can make them, where the same thing is allowed, we could certainly make them
Yeah,
consistent.
because they both say professional offices, they both say healthcare facilities and services. They both, you can see churches the same in both, but if we
Yeah.
modify the
Yeah.
north, if applicable, down there,
That's
that's all.
That's
It's
definitely a good
cleanup.
comment.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Should there be a size limit on that?
On what?
I know it says it's as an accessory.
Right.
should we still put like, didn't we originally say, oh, this is southwest, the
This is
southwestern,
southwest.
so there was only the,
So the idea there is just to make sure it's clear that if you've got a permitted use, say a store, and you have a storage facility associated with your store, that's okay, so long as it's secondary and accessory.
okay, and an accessory is always going to have a smaller footprint?
Typically, yeah. So I think we have actually a definition. Accessory. I can find it. I think we do. We don't. But yes, it's considered to be, it's a secondary use to the primary use. We could go further and put in a limit.
I think we should either that or define accessory.
It's interesting that we don't. I thought we, oh, no, here we do. So it's not a precise definition in the sense of, it doesn't say anything about proportionate size, but it says any use which is customary, incidental, and subordinate to the principal use of the structure or lot.
It might make more sense though to put a size limit.
We could.
I think just to get rid of any ambiguity.
Well, we certainly could, because you've already got a limit on the size of commercial uses that are allowed. So you could certainly stick in a limit.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 75,000 square feet.
So,
Start?
yeah, well, warehousing of goods as an accessory use to permitted uses in 701 Q.
701 2
701 Q,
Q. Let me go to Q.
So,
under
Yeah, I
permitted
see.
uses.
Yes.
so right now, basically, you already have the limitation of 20,000 square feet for the permitted commercial uses. So needless to say, if it's accessory to a use, it would be less than that.
Right.
It would. and really it's
Accessory
the
would always
traffic.
be less than the primary structure. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the use is secondary or incidental. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, we could set a limit that says it's a smaller footprint, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's got a smaller footprint, because you can have a use that is secondary, but still takes up a fair amount of space.
Right.
Like if you have indoor truck bays, that might not be the primary use of a property, but it could take up a lot of real estate. So usually your focus is on, is the activity customary? And is it clearly secondary and incidental? It's not the driver. It's not the primary use of the site. So that's usually how you look at it. But again, if we think a maximum limit is, we could certainly put one in. Not to exceed 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, whatever we think is
Right.
appropriate.
Right, because these are only for those establishments listed in B, right?
Exactly.
I think that we should be okay with that. I don't know. Or do you think we should still put a size limit on it?
I think we should put a size limit.
We have 20,000 square feet as for the shopping type uses. And originally in your, the original one you sent was greater than 150,000 in this.
That
In
was
this
misplaced though.
district.
That was,
Okay.
so in the other two industrial districts, you're allowed up to 75 by right. And then between 75 and 150 is special exception. And then above 150 is not permitted.
Okay.
But that wasn't true in this commercial district.
Do we know about how large the storage buildings are that say like Wilson's uses?
Which one?
Wilson's.
that Wilson's
Farms.
uses.
There's a bond right there.
Yeah, and like they just built that big hoop house.
They're probably, the bond right on the side of 3A by the house, that's probably 60 by 80. I can guess, in that ballpark.
That makes what, 48?
I think the new bond is gonna
4,800.
be 10,000.
4,800 square.
The new one that
Yeah, so that's
they're
not.
doing now, yeah, across the street, 10,000.
What's 10,000?
The new one near the existing hoop house. hoop
Yeah.
barn.
It's out there,
I think it's 10,000.
not where you can knock across the street.
Yeah.
The Roches.
Yeah,
They,
Well,
they got
they're putting a new
approval.
one.
They're putting in 3 new buildings.
Yeah, but the one right across from, next to the white one, that's only probably 40 by 40, 40 by 50.
there's another one they're building, doing the process.
There's one
They're doing the
down
foundation now.
at the old Donuts farm, that built that one. But
Yeah.
I don't think any of them are 10,000 square feet.
That's pretty big.
That's a big
That's
one.
100 by 100.
It was 80 by.
Yeah, it's bigger. It's a pretty good size.
So what, say 10,000 square feet
Mhm.
limit on the accessory warehouse?
But it's an accessory
Right, yeah.
It's not.
to, for, I mean, it's not, we're talking about, dry goods, foods, hardware, clothing, and apparel, antiques.
Yeah, but couldn't you always go with, say your max limit is 20,000, but you still have the ability to, if somebody comes to you with a plan and says, no, that's not going to work, can't you say it'd have to be reduced? Or if you set it at 20,000, that's what they get to go with.
It can be less. can't
It could be less. It couldn't be more.
That's what I'm saying. So if they came to you with a plan that was at 20,000 and we as a planning board look at it and say, no, we're not going to accept that size.
Well, it's
You
a
have to
permitted
reduce
use,
it.
so I think they would be able to do
You
it.
said, put in there 20,000 and they wanted
Yeah.
20,000.
If
You'd
it's a
have to.
permitted
Yeah.
use, they'll
Yeah.
be able to do it.
Should we go in the middle and say 15? Anyone else
Do I hear
ever throw a
16?
number out?
Going once, going.
So you asked the question about the Wilson's farm. They were gonna store.
Yeah.
Hay and
Right.
other dry
Right.
goods,
How
right?
big?
Yeah.
How big?
And that was the 80 by 100? 80 by, what did you say it was?
I
800?
think it was 80 by, but don't
Okay.
I forget.
go back to the old site. and figure it out.
It's still up there. Should we stick in 10? We still have time to think about it.
Wanna table it?
But they are serving Massachusetts, right? Or this was supposed to be for animals, right? Hay, what was that supposed to be?
Well, yeah, I mean, Wilson, agricultural use is different. So
Yeah,
this
it's
really
different.
wouldn't apply to agricultural uses.
But they may go over 10,000 if they're, right? 10,000 square
Yeah.
feet.
Right, but
So I don't
they
know,
wouldn't
I think
fall
that's
into
low.
this.
Hmm?
They wouldn't fall into this
Why?
because they're not an establishment. So it's only for establishments that are defined in 701B. You
Right.
have to refer back to
Oh, I see.
701B.
Gotcha. I was looking at 704. Okay. Oh, so you're saying that size of warehousing is only for.
For the establishments that are
I'll worry
listed
about that in a
in-
second.
But it was a good comparison for,
yeah, I mean, it just gives you a sense of the size that
Scale.
we're talking about.
Instead of a small sidewalk, you might want to consider a height restriction. So you can build 100 by a 10,000 square foot building that looks like it's high.
Yeah.
Or you can put a height restriction and it's gonna look small.
There is a height restriction. Do we have a height restriction? But mostly
Yeah.
based on the fire trucks, right?
I think on residential.
What was it, John?
I think on residential you do,
Is it, oh, okay, it's only residential.
because we don't have a ladder truck fire.
Do we want to look at the other sections to get an idea of the other sizes we're looking at?
We could, sure. You want to take a look at those?
Maybe we can come back to this.
Right. I mean, we can,
I mean,
you know,
I can just flush it out here.
right, we can debate that.
So on the permitted uses, so this is the northern district, but I have the same question about I'm sorry, about the southern district. No, I guess it's the northern district. So in the permitted uses, there was a section about, so it talks about gasoline sales, automobile service and repair, fast food restaurants with takeout, and warehouses, right?
What district are you in?
The northern district,
Okay.
yeah, because southern, well, but I think it's the same for the southern district because
Yes, they're the
it
same.
kind of repeats itself. So here's the basic question that applies to a lot of this. In 801, the northern commercial zone, which has the conditional uses, it talks about gasoline sales, automobile service and repair, fast food restaurants, warehouses. Under the fast food, there was language in there that says that the planning board shall determine whether building design and landscaping is compatible with mixed commercial / residential and historic character of the area.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You see that language?
Yeah.
But that's missing from the others. So my question is there a reason why we wouldn't include that language throughout a lot of this? Frankly, I like that language. And so I don't know why we just put that into the fast food restaurant section and not, for instance, to the gasoline sales section. And why we wouldn't apply it across the board to these other, to the southern district conditional uses, the northern district.
Can it just be moved up to the top?
Yeah,
It's a-
that might make more sense instead of having to repeat it every time. But because under the permitted uses, it says the planning board shall determine if the proposed commercial use will meet the standards established herein. But maybe that sentence goes up top as part of as part of sort of one of the conditions for a conditional use, that the planning board will determine whether design and landscaping is compatible.
Well, what we could do is create a new section 802. Where I'm saying 802, there's one missing, but we could simply make it a general provision.
Yeah.
So that's applicable across the board. That's easily done. I think the reason it was put in there was to a point that we had talked about previously, concern about those kind of prototype buildings,
Yep.
Making sure they don't all look
Right.
that standard way. So, but it is a general concern. We could make it a general
Right.
provision
Right.
pretty readily.
Yeah,
Can
I
do
mean,
that.
it's sort of there was photographs you sent of in Hollis, I think it was, right, where
Mhm.
they're able to do
Mhm.
I don't know, it's a pharmacy or a restaurant, but they do it in such a way that it blends in. And so part of my concern is that, okay, if we're going to allow these uses, or at least a conditional use, that we have the planning board would have some control over the style and design, that it looks appropriate for that section of town and would fit in, as opposed to a big box of a pharmacy that they just stick in the corner. That would I don't think it really fits in as well. And you could make it. I think you could figure out a way to do that with landscaping and with the design of the building, where I think a lot of these uses would be more acceptable to people in town if it wasn't so obviously looking like, a commercial zone. So,
I agree with that.
Agreed. I thought before we dive too deep into details, I could just touch on some of the changes to this section that I made since the last time. There's really only two, and they're pretty simple, both of which reflected discussions that we had previously. So the first is that we do now include in this section an allowance for warehousing and distribution facilities of up to 75,000 square feet, which we had not included. I think there was an intent to allow that in this district, but we hadn't. And then now there is another special exception provision that allows warehousing and distribution facilities between 75 and 150 by special exception. But as a conditional use. And that's, again, very, very similar to the language that we had previously. So kind of once again, I think that was the intent. The other change I made for the sake of consistency in all the other sections when we were addressing the warehouse issue, we had made a change to what we had added a prohibited uses section, changed the language up here where it said the only prohibited use was the 20,000 square feet limit, exceeding 20,000 square feet. So what I did was put in a new, again, very consistent to the other districts, prohibited uses. So the language on large shopping centers of more than 20,000 square feet was moved down here. The language that any use not listed is prohibited was moved down here from the first paragraph, and then added a provision here prohibiting warehouse and distribution facilities of greater than 150,000 square feet. So that's pretty much a language that we parroted elsewhere. So it was a primary change. The other change was that previously I had put language in there on allowing residential as a conditional use. And based on the conversation last time, I pulled that from here and made it its own section, which of course I now have to dig up, but I will. So now that's freestanding, although already based on some of the comments that we had heard earlier, I kind of like the idea of using a title more like this.
Are you saying all buildings have to be 250 feet back from here?
No, not all buildings. Wait, let me open this.
Just the warehouses.
Just warehouse and distribution facilities, yeah, that are greater than 75,000 square feet.
Okay. So how come that doesn't apply to C?
It was mainly because of the size of the buildings, because this allows buildings of between 75,000 square feet and 150,000 square feet, whereas fast food restaurants, couldn't be that large. That was the
Okay, so D stands alone from C.
right. So D just applies to warehousing and distribution facilities between 75 and 150. And
so can we comment as we go along?
yeah,
Is that okay? I'm not crazy about a permitted use, the new section in Q. I think it's fine for conditional use for warehouse fulfillment or distribution facilities, but I don't. I think that needs a little more scrutiny, and so I would not be crazy about including that as a permitted use.
we could simply make them all conditional uses.
Make all what all?
We could allow warehouse
Yeah.
fulfillment and distribution facilities as conditional uses only if that were.
Conditional use goes to zoning before us.
No, it comes to the planning board, but they have to meet certain conditions before they are allowed.
I just don't want it subjective,
Hopefully not.
I like it. Well, that's my opinion. I know we differ here. I like it more explicit
So right now
and
it's
a conditional
pretty,
use.
this was really more or less accommodating what we already have in terms of size. But the conditional use criteria is, basically here what you see in D. So some of it's pretty explicit, like the setback. Some of it is definitely, there's room for discretion.
Is there a reason you don't like Q being explicit like that? Do you think it's dangerous legally or something?
I don't think it's dangerous legally. I just don't. I think that if you're going to put in a warehouse, a fulfillment or distribution facility up to 75,000 square feet, that should be that should require a greater amount of scrutiny.
So the
by
same conditions
the
as the
town.
conditional
Yeah.
use permit?
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with
Yeah.
having all of them.
I'm not saying you wouldn't ever allow it.
Mhm.
I think I agree there should be a limit. I don't know if 150,000 square feet is the number. I have a hard time. I don't think that spatially. So when I think of 150,000 square feet, I don't know what exactly that means. I have to actually see it. But
That came from it being slightly larger than the Barron's proposal. So that, just in terms of a visual to what might have fit.
and I think this language about the planning board determining whether the building design and landscaping is compatible with the mixed commercial, residential, historic character of the area. I think it gives us some ability to weigh in on the design of it and not just allow it. If someone wants to construct it, they can do it if we put it in as a permitted use.
So just take Q out and change D of the conditional use to just say, take out the greater than 75. So it's just any warehouse up to 150,000.
Right.
square
We
feet.
could do that.
I don't have an issue with that.
With the same conditions, the 1, 2, 3. Because I think, we certainly would want to be concerned about undue traffic congestion, depending on where it was, if it was on 3A. In terms of the number of vehicles going in and out of there, if they're a distribution center, how much traffic is that going to create that section of town? We might not probably look at that pretty carefully before we would agree to it.
That sounds good to me.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, can do that.
I'm
Can
not
you
sure
not-
I'm liking that because the whole reason we started this workshop, I'm glad you joined, was because of the warehouse issue, right?
But conditional use permits are more stringent than just leaving it
It just
as a
seems like
permitted
the
use.
name is not, it's conditional. It's, it could be this way one time, maybe not the next time. I don't know.
Well, so legally, I think that there have to be some rational standards. You can't be arbitrary and capricious and say, I just don't like this person. I don't like this project. I don't like, this store that wants to do that. It's just sort of arbitrary and capricious. I think that would be problematic if a decision of the planning board got appealed to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. So I don't think you can be completely arbitrary and capricious, but I think that there's the reservation of some discretion for the town to have some say about the design, the placement, how far it is off of the road, to consider the traffic.
I agree with the traffic.
But there would be, am I correct that if it was a permitted use, that and if it was under 75,000, they could build it regardless of how much traffic was going in there. So all of a sudden we got this facility that is allowed to operate because it's a permitted use, and we increase the traffic wherever that happens to be in that district pretty substantially. And we're like, what happened.
So you're setting the argument based on the traffic, which we can make everybody do that litmus test.
Yeah, we could just add that 1, 2, 3 from the conditional uses into the permitted uses for Q there.
I guess it's like,
That would solve it,
I don't know
right?
if I've seen many conditional uses here. I would like to see how stringent it is. But again, if all of a sudden 3 go through that could be 150,000 feet and somebody else comes in front of us and we say, no, you can't, they're going to say, well, why were they allowed to do it? So
Right.
this just sets
Right.
an entry, size limit
And
or maximum, I should say.
And I think there would have to be some rational basis. You'd have to be able to articulate in part of the decision of the board why this was being denied when that one was being granted.
Mhm.
It may have to do with density. It may have to do with traffic. It may have to do with the design that they're proposing. There may be factors that the board could consider in approving or rejecting the application, but you'd have to articulate that, and you couldn't just say, yeah, we're saying no, because we just want to say no. I don't think that would withstand review by the New Hampshire Supreme Court, and our decision
I
would probably
agree.
be overturned.
But even still, our minutes aren't really so detailed to say the argument of why.
Well, we probably would
they
have to
said
do that,
yes.
though. We may have to, in some of these cases, we may need to, we
We
may
have to make specific findings.
Right.
Or show specifically what it is.
And it wouldn't be just minutes. Remember, they could look at the, they could look at the actual, they could actually listen to the hearing, the questions that were asked, the comments that were made. But, it may be a need for a more formal letter of rejection, which spells out the reasons why this wasn't being granted, if that was the board's
It's
decision.
kind of like when we do our conditions of approval, you
Yeah.
would basically have to state specifically, what your finding is in terms of a particular regulation or whatever it is.
Right. And so we may have to make findings, right? We find that this is going to increase the traffic because of the number of vehicles that are projected to be coming in and out of that place.
Right.
So, the fact that we made those kind of specific findings and that we would state that,
Preserve it.
preserve it, and it's unlikely that, frankly, that would get overturned. I mean, the Supreme Court was going to defer to the findings of the board, but they have to be rational findings. They can't be irrational findings.
The only thing I will say is and you were here, we lost 3 members in 1 week on the planning board. When we had Thomas Young and we had another attorney leave and somebody had to give their notice. So you and I were promoted pretty quickly. So this all relies on a board being, seasoned.
Yep.
And things change. So,
Yep.
We could be scrutinizing it one way and
Yep.
a greener board may not, or even seasoned people may, So I think it's vague and that's my opinion, but I want to know what would hold up legally. But this whole exercise started because of what happened over in Hudson. Then so that definitely.
3A being a state road, if they got a permit to access 3A, the planning board would have a very difficult time not approving the plan because of traffic, if they got a permit from the state.
Well, it's certainly something to consider, for the board to consider in terms of its finding.
Right.
And
You would, but I'm just telling you from my side, if I got a permit from the state and the planning board said, no, you can't build it because we don't want the traffic, and the state gave me a permit on their highway,
Well, then we need to
I
have
don't-
a
I don't-
rationale for why
Right,
we
right,
would deny it.
Right.
So
if you got
I
the
think that's
permit,
the-
you'd have it.
So now we have this
Common
big
sense.
warehouse we don't want because the state says it's okay.
Well, the state says it's okay to access the road, which means we couldn't deny it because we're gonna say,
Right,
well,
so
it's
now
gonna
we're
have
stuck
traffic.
with
The
what we
state's
really
already done
don't want.
the answer on that one.
I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Chapman on that. I think that the findings of the board, if they're rational, would be deferred to by the New Hampshire Supreme Court. So they would look to the board, and I don't think they would rely just simply on the fact that they get a permit from the the Department of Transportation or whatever to access, they would still look to the findings of the board. If the board made findings that this would be, that this would add to the traffic, on a way that would cause a hazard, even if the Department of Transportation said, well, we're
Yeah.
fine with it, I don't think that they would overturn that. But, that's a human process, so I can't, there's no guarantees in the legal process.
Right.
Yeah, and you have to be, you have to be fair with everybody.
Right.
I agree with that. It's not, nothing's cut and dry. It can go either way.
But
I mean,
but having discretion, it is not a bad thing. And because otherwise it can get out of control. I mean, you just can think people can do things that, that's why we have it permitted uses. All right. So it's permitted. You can do it. You don't really need to come to us. You can do it. And so putting something as a permitted use is, for me, is a big deal. Because we're basically saying, okay, we take ourselves out of this, and so somebody can come in and they can build a 75,000 square foot distribution center on 3A.
whereas if you're doing it conditionally, then you have a little bit more.
Right.
In
You get
terms
to
of
review the whole thing.
getting to review it, you get an opportunity to
Right.
ask the questions that have to be asked, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And again, the 75,000 threshold is almost like, we're going for 150. It's a suggestion. We were
Right.
trying to say, we
Yep.
don't want this in this town. No,
Yeah.
that was what the exercise was, right?
And we're not saying we don't want it in the town. We're saying that before it comes into the town,
Should be
that there's a review by whatever board exists at the time that this comes in.
I'm still not convinced, but I'll have to think about it.
The conditional use permit is a great way to go. You have control.
Yeah.
You have control of what the building is.
I mean, you have to follow the regulations. I mean, that's key. I think that's the problem too. I mean, I think the state has seen, if you remember from the Regional Planning Commission meeting, where they have the elected boards going, and basically people going in and, wanting these projects, and the elected board said, we're not going to give it to you. That's it. And then they go to the housing appeals and they get remanded. So it is, it's important that you're able to, grant these things in a way that you look at them in a way that you can, make the proper findings and conclusions, and being able to help that to be preserved for purposes.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you're saying if you removed Q from being explicit and you go over to conditional uses and you go over to D,
You just get rid of the
You just-
75,000.
75,000.
fulfillment and distribution.
Not to exceed
greater than
150,000
75,000.
square
Yeah.
feet, but with those conditions.
So if they're less than 75, if they're 75,000 or less, they don't have to do a traffic study anyway. And that could still be a tough situation.
No. You don't require a traffic study from anybody anytime you
Right.
want.
You still have site plan regs, so they still have to be site plan.
But the way this is written, it's saying if it's greater than 75,000 feet, right?
We were talking about removing that greater
So,
than 75,000.
Yeah,
Good.
it'll just say.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. I
warehouse
just want to make
fulfillment
sure
and
because
distribution.
you're just getting rid of the
Up
threshold.
to one.
Not to
95,
exceed 150,000.
So there goes the threshold, right?
It was what?
I thought we were trying to keep them smaller. No, we just set the bar at 150,000 or less.
Well, we already did. I mean,
Less.
it
The
is.
bar's already there. It's
It's already
just
there.
between 75 and 150 is conditional. And
Right.
before 75 wasn't conditional. Now we're just saying, let's just make it all conditional. So we actually get to really
Right.
examine what's being put in front of us. Because anything up to 75,000, you won't be able to really stop them because you're already saying we're allowing it. So
I
5
agree
years
with
down
that.
the road,
I
if somebody
agree
wants
with
to come in with 75,000, The board 5 years from now won't be able to say, well, let's talk about this because it's permitted.
And by the way, the way it's written, the warehouse up to 75,000 doesn't come with those conditions that they should be set back or landscape buffers or not create undue traffic congestion or hazard.
Yeah, it was just permitted.
It's just permitted. So,
So we're setting our
So
limit
that should be
of
added
up
to
to
the permitted
150.
Letter Q.
Only
If we
if
keep-
only
if
if
we keep
Q.
it there, that
Only
1,
if
2,
Q
and
was
3
kept.
should
At the
be added
minimum.
to Q.
Right. At the minimum, if you kept Q at the minimum, you should have 1, 2, and 3 added to Q.
Right.
But I like what you're saying about putting it all in D. Just get rid of the 75,000.
and remember, if we incorporate that other language we talked about earlier about the planning board shall determine building design and landscaping compatible with mixed commercial, residential, and historic character, that also is part of the conditional use evaluation of the project.
Should we move that to the top of the section
Of
instead
of what?
So C
Instead of having it
C3
only
is
apply
going to
to
be
the-
moved to the top instead of just under C. It's going to be moved to the top of that section, so it applies to all of those. Is that
of,
correct?
not just conditional uses?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we should apply it to
The whole thing.
everything.
Right, I was gonna
Yeah.
stick it under a general provision.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it
So it
applies
applies to everything.
to permitted uses and, oh, even better. Okay. Yeah, all right. How would that work, Jay, though, for a permitted use?
So right now, I mean, we do have site plan review regulations that do have design review. So they
Okay.
are doing the building review. I think what it's emphasizing is that any use or building coming into this district it is going to have to meet that bar, that the planning board does have that discretion to determine. So I think it's okay as a general provision.
So we'd always have discretion to determine if the building design and landscaping is compatible, right? We would always have discretion for permitted and conditional use.
Right.
So they'd all have to come in front of the planning board.
They do anyway under site plan review.
Okay.
I think it's helpful to have it written as a general
Yeah.
provision, especially
Yeah.
for those newer planning board members.
Yeah.
You understand the control, I guess.
Right.
And for the benefit of the public, I think is to understand
Yep.
what the intent is in this commercial district. It's,
Yep.
It is to preserve that,
That's right.
character, to maintain that, historic
Right.
rural character.
Yep.
And that's an important message, I think, to send.
I do too. I think it's really, really important that they understand that, we're not talking about doing something like, Route 28 in Salem.
Right. It's not strip malls. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to be Tuscan Village.
Nor will it be Tuscan Village.
No offense, Tuscan Village. Okay.
I mean, to be honest with you, the drugstore permitted use causes me a little heartburn. But I think if we put this section that you just talked about in there, I think there would be a way to design a drugstore
Sure.
that would blend in, and and I think a lot of people might appreciate that if you could do it in a way that that didn't look like,
The only thing I
Hudson.
can
I'm
think
sorry,
of
but,
is
looks like
Walgreens in Bedford.
yeah,
The Walgreens in Bedford, it kind of
like a
blends
barn,
in.
isn't it?
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
barn. Or,
Yep. Yep.
That type of
Yep. I think you can do it. So, okay. Kim is still
That
not.
sounds
convinced.
good.
Okay. I have to
She's
think about it.
scowling.
Let the record show.
Programmer.
And not to leave that
If it's
necessarily.
true this way, if it's false that way, the gray, there's no gray, so
Right. Yeah. Law. There's always gray.
law, nature.
It depends.
So jumping to this, but we don't have to jump to this. We can still talk about other uses, but I did just want to note that we did, coming out of the conversation last week, previously we had under conditional uses, the residential use option. And so now I've pulled that to be a freestanding. At this point, we can always bring it back in. We could keep it freestanding as another warrant article. But freestanding as a warrant article, it is still structured the same way that we saw it last time. It still allows residential developments, mixed use residential developments as a conditional use. Really, the only change at all I made was previously it said maximum of 4 residential units per building. I did up that to 6 based on our conversation last time. That's the only change right now.
Where is this one?
803.
I don't see that in my 803. Conditional uses, I have 803, right? And what's
It's freestanding now, so it's a separate document. If you don't have it up, I can give you a copy.
Oh, I do have it.
Okay, good.
Got it.
So I just did it separately because I think there
sorry.
was some concern that, maybe opposition to residential might sink the changes to the commercial district itself. So maybe we do them separately.
Okay.
So that's the reason we can change our mind about that at any point. And so the terminology was planned residential / commercial developments. So PRCD. I will say, based on what Kate sent around, I like village mixed use better. Or something along those lines just sounds better because I think that's more
It came up a lot.
right.
When looking at ordinances of other towns throughout the country. Because anytime I tried to find mixed use, it was a very urban area.
Right.
And then I finally came across this village mixed use, and that's where I started to see the smaller towns. They don't have a main street, but maybe a subdivision might have a small area that has partially commercial and partially residential as a part of that plan and that whole lot.
So I'm happy to make that change to the language. And Kate, you'd also had a suggestion about a minimum open space requirement. And that is true. Those are common in ordinances like this, and this doesn't have one. So we could certainly incorporate that.
Jay, who would provide the fiscal impact study?
The applicant.
Okay, maybe we should say that to be clear. Fiscal impact study shall be provided by the applicant demonstrating.
That's easy enough.
I have a comment in a minute.
And what would be in that sort of a fiscal impact study? What kinds of things would they be looking at to determine whether it has a net positive impact to the town?
So typically what you do is you do an assessment of what the cost is for each type of service in the town. So you'll look at schools, police, fire, general government, et cetera. And there's more than one way to do it, but you can do it per person. So you estimate the number of people that be generated, the number of school kids that be generated, and do it on a per capita basis. You can do it on a per square foot basis. But that really is what it is. It's a tax impact analysis. And then you'll also estimate the amount of tax revenue that the development is going to generate, and you look at what the delta is.
Okay. All right.
So I had suggested that, I saw when looking through all these ordinances, I'd say 90% of them had something about a required open space, percentage open space to be left. Most often the number was 20%. Looking at your plans, it looks like there are, at least your kind of rough plan that you had given us, there are areas that, you weren't looking to pack the lots. you know, with buildings, obviously. And a lot of them had like, the selling points were like gazebos or something built in around the neighborhood and kind of public spaces.
2.5 units per acre is pretty difficult. Because you want to keep it so that you end up with below 60. You would do that. So if you build something, if you build a townhouse or an apartment, you're gonna keep it in a cluster. So that it's gonna get that 2.5 acres, 2.5 units per acre. But it's gonna be on basically the same size building as a regular house would be. So you end up with a lot of open space.
So yeah, I think I don't think or my thought was putting that percentage in here is not really going to limit so much the construction, because it would happen anyway, like you're saying.
It's gonna happen, it's gonna happen anyway.
So you want to put it in?
But I think we should, just in case. Not every developer is going to have be as well intentioned as you are with Litchfield.
Right. So Rick, have you had a chance to look at this? And does this, from a perspective of a developer, does this work? Does this make sense?
May I pass something out for them on 801? I hope I have enough, Mr. Sharp. I think this is going to take some time to look at the one. Okay. Do we have one? Okay. What I did is I went through all of the books in the town hall, and I also got online, and I looked at all the warrant articles, and I made a database myself, because I wanted to see a few things. I only have warrant articles that are related to industrial, commercial, some residential I put here if I thought it'd be interesting, with mixed-use housing was coming on board. So you can see if it passed or didn't pass. I wanted to see the history of what happened. I wanted to see if anything we're discussing was already rejected,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. Also wording, if we got to an article that Jay's working on or we're working on, if it passed, maybe they just like seeing it a certain way for the past 20 years, just saying, for simplicity. Or a complete rewrite, you can see some of that. It's a lot of work to gather the data, but I think we need to make sure that these things here that have passed, that are in here, we need to make sure. I talked to people who were here during the split up of the town where we put the commercial ends at the end and the residential in the middle. Most of them wanted the businesses aside because that circumferential highway was coming in. You were in reaction mode. I get it. The main thing they said was they didn't want a big business being dumped in the middle of the residential. So that's what they were trying to prevent.
Yeah.
This now, and I don't care if it goes to the voters, but I just want to make sure we do our due diligence on this. This is why we're researching this. Phase 2 will be next time, or if we have a special meeting, maybe we don't have to wait 2 weeks, the master plans, because anything we have to make sure matches that as well. Especially if we start getting into mixed use, which is what we're looking at. So I would say we need to just take time quickly on your own time to read this to see if anything was mentioned about mixed use. I don't think so, just by a quick read, and it doesn't mean we can't give it to the voters, but I just want to make sure we have a due diligence before, we get up in front of deliberative and have to explain a few things.
This was a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
This is very helpful.
Ignore a few typos because you get tired.
Yeah, you can go.
All right, so, and these are just the ones I thought were relevant. Okay. And anybody who's voted over the last years in town knows these. There might be a few at the back that got kind of separated, but you can leave them alone. So where I'm going with this is when I think of the mixed use, I haven't seen people mention it in the past, not that maybe they did, but they were trying to get rid of the problem of a business going into the residential areas. Now we're trying to go the other way and put more residential into the business areas. Right? And this is maybe a first time discussion, maybe not. It is to me, maybe our predecessors had other discussions. So this is just showing you how they told the town, how put it to how we're going to split the districts up. And then they started to say what you could and couldn't do in certain districts, or if you wanted to remove something. So again, I'm just showing you that the history of what happened, because we're about to change what's here. So I think for me, I don't think we're ready to vote on anything yet, but I know we have a time clock here. But my own research would be to look at the master plan chapters and make sure we do talk about housing a lot, but make sure every time they mention the 2 or the 3, well, it's 5, but the commercial districts, see if they wanted housing in there or not. And if we just look at housing in general, can it apply to different districts? That sounds, we need to really look at that. Because anything we do has to match with the master plan, because that's how our town has had public hearings and has spoken that that's what they want. So if this goes against it because it's more modern and times have changed, we might have to synchronize that as well with the master plan. I did look at the capital improvement plan, which is mostly capital buildings, just to see if there was a strategy, an agenda or a strategy to work more with the housing, but I didn't see anything in there. But at least we can say we did our due diligence and we looked at that. So if you read these, you can start to see where things could go in and out and all of that, or what failed because the town said no. So again, this is not something we can do in 5 minutes, which is, if you see any delta, let's address it, right? Is there a solution, or how do we present it, or how you build your case? Or is there, if we're out of sync with another document in the planning board, we have to get it in sync first. It's the time. We've got to make sure that we have many eyes on it if it's going to go forward for a warrant article. Because I don't want our documents to get out of sync. We're saying this on one, and our ordinance is saying something else, or our master plan is saying something else. So again, I'm not against it, but again, we're just introducing a new topic to the town.
Yeah.
You're starting to put residential in commercial zones. And honestly, you mentioned the golf courses were mostly underwater or in a floodplain, other than the clubhouse you had. Because people talk to me, and one of their concerns is some of these golf courses could flip into residential. I don't know where your golf courses are. I know you have a few in town, or 2 at least.
So past Conway is in the flood, is most of the golf courses in the flood.
So that'll never change. It would never change because 75% of it's in the floodplain. So the only place that you could actually build is pretty limited the way that it was designed. So chances of that happening are pretty slim.
Is that the one at the end of Albuquerque? That's past Conway, right?
No,
Past
No,
Conway.
that's
Which
down
one's
by
the
the
big
church.
Right
The
here.
big one. So the big one is on that side of the river. Okay.
Yeah, so that's when that was done. And we had to adjust, as we built that, we had to get core permit, and we filled things and dug things out to make that work, to stay in the floodplain so we didn't have any impact on the floodplain. Hidden Creek is in a commercial zone. So that would be, or transitional, one or the other. It's in commercial or transitional.
I think it's a little of both, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's ever going anywhere, to be honest with you. It's a good transition between our quarry and things that we have, that it works there. So it's not going to be residential if it is, because it's not zone residential. I believe it's all transitional.
So again, these conditional use permits start to come into play, and later they flip maybe to be I don't know, neighborhood. I don't know what you want to call it these days. We just have to understand that. And the voters need to understand that.
Yeah, I agree with you, because the mixed use is already permitted. It's as like single family houses.
Which district are you talking about?
Which one was it? It was. Yeah, northern, in
this
the
is
northern
what-
commercial, in the transitional, in the highway commercial, and the southwestern commercial.
There was one of these warrant articles where it was like from 1989 or something back. They
It's in
could
there.
be there.
It's in there right now.
We did put Hidden Creek went in there. How far is Hidden Creek? Is that residential? Is that way up at the top? That maybe they're not in
The
it.
southern end of it.
That is-
Okay, so there
It's,
it is.
yeah, it's mixed.
Yeah, so if you look at these warrant articles, you'll see whether you can have certain things in there.
That's what I'm saying. So mixed use right now is allowed in the northern commercial district. It's just more planned as that single,
I wanna
here's
see
my
that.
house and
Right.
here's my, garage that I work on cars.
But
in.
this is very different mixed use. than we're
This is almost,
introducing.
it's introducing like a multifamily.
Exactly,
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
So
This
you're
is,
expanding, all you're doing is you already allow residential in the
Northern Commercial District, you're
Yeah.
just expanding it.
it's already allowed,
but if we start doing townhomes or condos, or,
but it's still already allowed.
Yeah.
Because the horse farms in the Northern Commercial District.
didn't they get a special ordinance on that?
No, they're within the multifamily overlay.
They are.
Right.
Most of the district isn't, but that
See what I'm
part,
saying?
that part is.
Unseasoned planning board is gonna go, okay.
But this planned residential commercial development talking about, I don't think this has ever been proposed before, has it?
No.
I have
Not
not
as
seen
this
it.
large of a,
Right, but I mean, it's a mix of commercial and residential. It's a different, it's a slightly different concept than, look, I'm just looking at this quickly, but a lot of these are multifamily
that is new. Right.
proposals,
That's
right? So
extended.
that would get failed, but this is, there's a commercial element to this, to these projects that would have residential as well.
That's true.
And
but it-
that's right. And that's allowed.
But some people
right?
may say, we want, again, I'm playing devil's advocate, we want the commercial in this sections to stay commercial. So I'm saying, you're gonna have all kinds of voters
Right.
here that are gonna be,
No, I understand.
we want the tax base.
But they're not
that's-
commercial now, it's strictly. I mean, there's residential use throughout.
There's something in here about 1989 or something. That's why you really got to look at them all to
I
Can I
think
make a
see
comment?
it.
Yes,
You have to look at, as we just said, wave of the future. Look what's happening in Londonderry with mixed use, residential and commercial. Look at, we don't, certainly not the scale of Tuscan Village, but that is the wave of the future. That's what
Yeah.
people want.
Yeah.
You want to be near things that you can walk to that,
Right.
you know.
Right.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
either.
all for getting to the voters, but I want to make sure that we check.
And
That's all.
you have to take
And let them decide what they want to
a
do.
lot of context of what happened in the past. As soon as you said cluster, it was dead.
Right, I so did that, just, again, look at the, yes, we don't use that verbiage. Historic district was another one.
Right.
That went down in flames. We'll word it
I can't believe
differently.
that the historic district-
I can give this
that-
before you.
Right, that you would
Certain
think-
words we don't use in town.
Back then, way back, I mean, before we built Castle Conway, when we bought that property, we wanted to put 42 units on the river. There was a wooded area out there.
Mhm.
We were gonna put those out there, and we were gonna give the rest of the land to the town.
Mhm.
The zoning board gave us a variance, and the selectmen sued the zoning board, and they said, "Where are we at in the end?"
forget it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody was in the mode of preserving
Yeah.
farmland.
Right, right.
Here we were gonna preserve 100 and something acres.
Because right now you could subdivide this land up into 2-acre lots and
Yeah.
put one store and one house on each of those lots.
Yeah.
Under our ordinances, you could do that today if you wanted.
Yeah.
So this is sort of a just
Right.
getting your arms around like a larger plan.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of the village look is more Litchfield than, and it's more doable because we don't want to build a bunch of empty storefronts either.
If we don't do anything, it's gonna stay the way it is.
Yeah.
If that's what everybody wants.
And this isn't necessarily that
But
big.
not, the single family houses that are there are gonna stay. Someone might come in and, like the accountant that's there, might have something to do that.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're gonna stay the way they are.
Yeah.
Warren's is gonna stay Warren, and Warren's gonna leave, but I'm gonna rent it to somebody to continue with body shop there. That's what we want. Where do we wanna fix it up, make the area more presentable and
Yeah, right.
better as we go on? I mean, that's really how this all started, I think, is to get something.
And there are needs in town. We do need some of those Service stores, yeah, we do.
But I mean, I think Joni's exactly right. I mean, the attractiveness of having this kind of a mixed commercial, residential, where there are things that people will want to go to, whatever it is. I think that's right.
You can't compare Tuscan Village to, it's on the Mass line. You can't compare it. Those units are selling for up of $5,000 and they're sold out.
How much?
5,000, 3 to 5,000
And that's rent,
residential
right?
units. I mean, we're not at that price limit, but
Right.
This is so much smaller scale. You have to.
Yep.
look
yeah,
at-
yeah,
You have to look
definitely.
at what downtown Hollis is, and that's.
Yep.
Yeah.
you see
Yep.
Smaller things.
Yep.
You're not
Right.
gonna see nothing like that.
Yep.
No, no,
You're
we're
gonna
not.
see nothing like Woodmont. You don't have sewer.
Right.
Yeah, right.
You can't have the density. I mean,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of things.
That's right.
It's-
That is a good
Right,
point.
I'm not talking about the scale, I'm talking about the convenience and the
Right.
village concept.
Yes.
Is
right.
Woodmont is that next to Market
Londonderry.
Basket? Okay,
Oh, yeah.
right, so we're not, that's why the village stuck out at me, because
Yeah.
we're not looking at, 3 or 4 story buildings
Right.
with storefront underneath. It's not a main street.
Yeah. Right.
I think we did get a public comment from Jason Brennan. I think I'm gonna just read this into the record. I think you all have copies of the email that he sent. So let's see. This is dated November 16, 2021. Dear Chairman Croto, for the record, my name is Jason Brennan and I live at 23 Aldrich Street. I am writing to provide comment on the proposed zoning changes. Unfortunately, I'm traveling this week and am unable to attend in person, so I am sending this email. I have watched the workshops over the last few months and found them to be very informative, and the discussion has been thoughtful. In addition, I got reacquainted with the town's zoning regulations and spent time studying zoning, parcel, and aerial imagery information provided on the NRPC GIS website. In short, I think the application of mixed use makes sense in sections of the Northern Commercial District zone, particularly in areas on the east side of Route 3A. Here are 4 general thoughts. Number 1, the first thing is that we should probably ask ourselves one simple question. Knowing that this area will be developed someday, what would you like to see when you make the trek down 3A and turn onto Albuquerque? Sure, it would be great if there was a big park there, but as the land is privately held, that's probably not feasible in the long term. So, when turning on to Albuquerque, would you rather see a storage facility, a warehouse, a strip mall, Walgreens, or something more unique that has a mix of uses and fits within the character of the town? I think this is where mixed use comes into play and makes sense. Number 2, as we do not have a commercial town center in Litchfield, there is potentially an opportunity here to create something that is somewhat of a destination for residents that, in addition to a mixture of residential, could have sustainable commercial businesses like a coffee shop, deli, or an antique shop, and service-based businesses like a hair salon, exercise studio, or small rentable office space. What is great is that this area is served by the bike path, and if the bike path were extended up to the horse farm and down towards Mel's, that could tie in neighborhoods and businesses that are currently disconnected, and the whole area could be made easily accessible via different modes of transportation. And this mixed-use area could potentially be a center point, pie-in-the-sky idea. You may even be able to work in some sort of unique amenity into the plan, like a small area for a farmer's market or for food trucks, or simply a monument or small pavilion where people could gather. Number 3, if you look at the land to the east of Route 3A in the 3A / Albuquerque area, there's not a lot of acreage there. So I don't think we are going to find that magic bullet industry that is going to dramatically decrease our taxes. And if we do, it's going to change the look of that section of town significantly. We are protected on the east side of 3A as the backside of Warren's Auto Body, the backside of the property that Mr. Charbonneau recently rehabbed, and the driving range all appear to be in the Northern Commercial Industrial Zone. So we are dealing with a contained development area. I like the conceptual plan put forth by Mr. Charbonneau as it appears to include a thoughtful mix of 55 plus, 2-bedroom condos / apartments and commercial service-based industries. If we keep it to these types of uses, I think impacts will be minimal and citizens will see benefit. Number 4, regarding the land to the west side of 3A, which includes Morse Falls, the parcel where the gas station was proposed, the field by St. Francis and south to Mel's, and the older DeRocher Field, perhaps mixed use could work, or in my opinion, maybe it's a better suited for uses included in the northern commercial and industrial zone. To me, there are a few parcels there that could potentially support warehouses and light industrial, which is more of an NCI use. That is something to consider. On a side note, it's unfortunate what happened to Barron's, and I think it would be worth talking to the state to get an understanding of what happened, what could be built on that property so that it could be marketed appropriately. In closing, whether we like it or not, the area of town that is being discussed, particularly the area on the east side of 3A, is going to be developed someday, and the planning board, the citizens of this community, and the landowners have an opportunity here to work together to proactively shape how that part of town looks. I feel that this effort would allow us to preserve the feel of the community, limit impact, add services that citizens will benefit from, and support development that is mutually beneficial. Remember that the zoning regulations are decades old. Times change and we must adapt to new land use trends while balancing the needs of the community. Lastly, the NRPC GIS application is a very useful tool, can be used to help with these types of discussions. For the people watching on TV, it would be helpful to call up this app while discussing these types of items as it helps frame the discussion. I also think it would help the planning board members and folks in the audience. Maybe have Jay bookmark this. https://nrpc.map.geo.io/database sets/263-properties ? LAT/LNG=4.2.85033 a percentage sign 2C-71.453657. Respectfully, Jason Brennan. So just want to leave that in.
NRPC website is linked to the planning board site on our planning board site.
On our planning board site, correct.
So we have one more workshop in December
Okay.
when at that point we really would want to vote to send something to first public hearing.
Mr. Charbonneau, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. How many stories are the townhouses at Caldwell Court? Or how many stories? Like, are they one or are they 2 or 3 stories? Only 2 stories. We could limit like to a 2-story if that would make it a little more palatable. So we're not talking about these, high-rise buildings.
Mm-hmm.
That might be already in the it's already in the residential, but this isn't the residential zone.
We might want to think about that, like the 2.5 or 3. I think I like the ones that are being proposed up the street. Could think about that.
Oh,
but
that's right. I'm not sure.
it all depends on whether you have a garage under.
Okay. But there's not a height limit to the buildings in these districts as of right now. Is that right?
Just double check that.
Not an explicit one. I think we just require it because we don't have the fire truck.
Can we talk about sidewalks at some point?
Yes, I think that's
Yeah,
next.
that's next.
I do have one more question after Kate.
And also,
Preview of coming attractions.
I did
You're
want
stepping ahead of
to
us.
add something into this mixed use about specifying that there should be a plan for pedestrians
Mhm.
and tying that in.
So I had a discussion with the,
I have one more question. When you talked about the balance in the mixed use of business and residential, homeowner associations. Are these are going to be single-family homes or going to be owned by a homeowner association? You don't have to answer that, but I just want to make sure they are a business, and I don't want that to skew that balance we're trying to keep.
I think we addressed that, but let me just double check.
That's all. I don't care how the entity's made up. I just don't want it to, say, oh, we have a business. Well, it's really homes. That's all. I just want to make sure it's covered.
We can certainly clarify that.
That's all. As long as we address that.
So we have one more workshop in December.
Yes.
That's it. And then it would be a public hearing if we decided to go forward with it,
Right. Then we would vote what we want to put to a first public hearing.
which would be sometime in January.
Yeah. Usually we allow time for 2
Okay.
public hearings. So you can make a substantive change after the first public hearing,
Yep.
but not the second. So
And is there a way to let people know that about the public hearing? I know, Kate, you
I get like
took great
7
efforts
likes
to
from
try and
we publish that.
at your own peril, I may say, but congratulations
Yeah,
for
well,
the attempt. But
I think it's the same as our meetings, right?
yeah,
It's the same as our.
They're on the agenda, right?
Yeah, we would post it, but, and on the website as well.
I mean, certainly an effort could be made to get it out there.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
social media is the real way to get it out there.
Or the blinking sign on the side of the road.
Could
town
put it up
crier.
on-
We need a town crier.
with a bell.
Can we put it up on the board out front?
Yeah,
Um,
And I could try emailing the principals of the schools. They
Yeah.
can send an email out. I think they usually send like a weekly email with some community news.
Jason Brennan, he's got the What's Up Litchfield show.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if that's against the town policy or not. I have no idea.
I
But
mean, it's a news item.
Yeah.
It's
It's a news item.
Well, Michael, you could go on the show,
Mhm. Good.
promote it.
Film a commercial.
Yeah, I'm just, I've been sensitive, I think we all have, to the fact that there are people who own houses in that district and so, to try and engage them so they understand that this is something that was being talked about. I mean, you put out, I saw a couple of messages on that Facebook page, but, we don't really have a response. So I don't know what that means. But I just, anything we could do, I think, to kind of let people know that
Right.
this is something that,
How many houses is that? Would that be some kind of like a butter notice?
We typically don't do that.
Unless it's a large landowner. And the zone is changing.
It's only the houses on the west side of 3A
Yeah.
that affect it.
that's all.
Yeah, I don't know what all the other ones are.
that's the abutter.
Well, the
You
district
can
goes,
see them right here. This is really the strip of
does
houses.
it go all the way? It goes all the way to Manchester, right? Is it?
Yeah. but they're
The
all
zone?
developed. I mean, those people, if they went out, there's no open land there.
No, but they live there. I guess my point is if they live in that area and with this potential of more commercial development or mixed use development, that they should at least know that that's being talked about. And
It's really only it would only be more housing because the commercial is already there.
Right.
It's already there, so it's only to add the housing into the mixed use is what it would be.
Because the commercials are, it's already there. All the way to that northern. So potentially, the areas to be developed are the west side of 3A from Morris Falls.
Right.
Horse Farm, and then down to St. Francis, that one area, because everything else is already fully developed. Now, someone could buy a couple houses and put a commercial building in, but they could do that today anyway if they wanted to.
What about up here in the lobby? Could we put like something, you know?
I think we have to, right?
Well, I mean, I know we have public notice, but I'm just saying something that would, say, hey, when someone comes into town.
But that's only people that come into town. I
Yeah.
think the reader board is good. There's a reader board on Hillcrest also.
Is there that many houses? Should we just send, like, mail a notice out? You want to stuff mailboxes on your way home?
I wasn't volunteering to do that.
But
They can dress up as like Santa Claus or something.
I think definitely the leaderboard. I know at least some of those residences are on the Facebook page. And,
Yep.
and at that point, then it's talking to neighbors, right?
I mean, the idea is to get notice out for the public hearing, and notice
Right.
is notice, but if we can get more people, I
Yep.
think that makes sense. I mean, to know what we're doing, getting the word out. So let's talk about sidewalks.
So I had a discussion with the DOT. They're not against, I talked to Brian DeFosis at District 5. He said that, I asked him if we could build a sidewalk. It would have to be designed, obviously. And the biggest thing is the selectmen would have to agree to maintain it forever. So if it had to be upgraded or fixed. So it is doable. It can happen. And I would like to see it go from the north end of the northern commercial district on the west side. Then when we get to Moore's Falls or where the gas station is, cross over and come on my side of the road and go all the way down to Robin Ave.
Where's Robin now?
That's right just after Mel's, I live
Yeah.
end of the cornfield.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, all right,
But
that's,
Litchfield gas station? Litchfield,
With the-
Yeah.
Dick Jerry's?
old gas station.
yeah.
Across the road there.
Yeah.
In doing that, if we do that, and we get this all approved, I would build the section by Moore's Falls and do the crossing, pay for the crossing. Crossing's fairly expensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, did they say anything about you could hash mark 3A, or don't want that?
Hey, what?
Pedestrian crossing, or what do you do about?
Yeah, we can, I asked someone on free and he said, yep, those.
I could do it.
We can do it. Yeah, we just have to light it and do it.
Is that what you do? You just light it?
Yeah, well, you build it and you put warning signs. If you notice how they do it at the rail trails.
Yeah.
Similar to that.
Okay.
And you said cross at Moore's Falls
No, cross at the end of the gas
The
station
gas station.
at the end of the, okay.
and then go across the street somewhere in there where the gas station would go.
Yeah.
And then go all the way down to on that side of the road.
To connect to the bike
I'm
path and
proposing it,
further
so I'm
south.
proposing it on my side of the road because I think it's good and it ties into Albuquerque. We're gonna have to do a crossing somewhere.
Right.
And I think it should be a minimum of a 6-foot wide walk.
Is that where the bike path is?
The bike path is a,
Eight's the minimum for multi-purpose.
I didn't realize it was that wide.
so even 8, I'm fine with 8.
It's what?
Oh, I didn't really pay attention when I'm running.
You want it to be, wide so that people can
Pass.
there's plenty of room. And there's areas where it would work really well, like coming out of Albuquerque, there's already granite curb there. The drainage is there, everything's there, so it would just tie in, it could be in the right of way. Some places it would have to be in the right of way, some places can have to go out of the right of way. It just depends what it is. And then each developer would have to pay for their section of it as it went down through. And
how you handle the west side. Because we're gonna have some sections, so from Romano's down to Colby Road, that Colby Road to Colby Road, they're not gonna redevelop, so somehow we're gonna have to come up with funding for that section. But I think we could hit everybody else developing all the way down.
So this would be a.
And we have to strong arm.
Thank you. That was a concern. It didn't look right for the town to do that.
You have to.
You have to. That's kind of like, no, well, I'll have another discussion. So this would,
They'll maintain it.
Right.
In the state right. That's the only way the state's gonna allow it to happen is they won't let the developer. But the state, the town would have to agree to maintain it.
So are you talking about the entire northern
District.
northern commercial district would have
Yep.
its own requirement, general provision?
Yep.
For sidewalks.
So this would be sort of
And we-
piecemeal as the land gets developed.
Yeah, that's.
As you do it, you would have to commit to constructing that section of sidewalk in front of your property.
That's the way we got Albuquerque built.
That's how we got that.
All
built.
right.
I get strong dumb to build most of it.
So
If the board of selectmen supports it, I think it's a good idea, especially if we know that
Yeah.
we can cross
Right.
3A. That was always the holdup.
right. Yeah, I agree.
It's consistent with the walkable village character.
I think it's a great idea if we could do it.
I'll stick in language.
what was that?
I'll put language in that we can look at the next time.
Aren't you gonna put in, we're only gonna look at the fees, and I know it's a big task to do that. The impact fees, I know that was a whole algorithm, and weren't you gonna look at impact fees also?
Oh,
maybe,
we
as a-
do need to look at impact fees.
Yeah.
Wasn't that gonna be part of the sidewalk before this came along? We were gonna look at that as an option.
That was the idea because trying to get, it wasn't that we wanted pieces of sidewalk stuck in wherever somebody happened to have property.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
impact fees so that there's a
Right.
fund and then
Right.
we can actually plan out where we want these
And
sidewalks
we
to
could,
go.
right, and we can do that too. But obviously if you build it, then you don't need to make a contribution.
I thought this was gonna be a warrant article to ask the taxpayers to pay for it.
No.
No, well, that's
No.
good. This is why we're clearing it up. And I'm saying, oh, well, some may
Same
not
thing with
want
the
to.
impact fees.
So maybe that, we should look at that idea.
Same with the impact fees. It wouldn't be taxpayers
Yeah.
paying for
Right,
sidewalk, even if it wasn't on the.
That's what I was
developer's
saying.
end.
If the taxpayers had to pay for the sidewalk, we should look at the fees. That's why I was, you
Well,
cleared that
no,
up.
no. I think your impact fee is gonna stay the same.
That's just part of doing business. You gotta build the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Who,
It's part of the requirement. I mean, it's not, the crossing is the most expensive thing. And other than building a sidewalk down the side of it, it's engineering, but it's part of your site plan. I mean, you gotta do it. I mean, it's not, people need to do it.
I agree with you there. The idea behind the impact fees was just if something's being built, like if it were only the stables being developed, well, we don't necessarily want a sidewalk just right there in front of that property. It would be paying into a fund that maybe we're helping fund sidewalk elsewhere in town. So, but that's, a year or two down the road, the impact fees, it's going to take a while to get through that
Yeah,
anyway.
maybe at some point you might want to use something for that, maybe the piece from Colby Road to Colby Road, but I think that when the gas station comes, make them build that piece.
Mhm.
I'll build a piece, I'll commit to build a piece from the horse farm to the gas station. And I'll do the crossing.
Right.
And then, build it all, because I think it's good to tie that all in so that people, if we're gonna build this type of thing, we're gonna build a community, little community.
Yeah.
People need a place to travel and
Right.
walk on.
Especially to get
I
to
can
school.
tell you, when we first started building Albuquerque, I was against it when we built the bike path. I was against it. I said, no one's ever gonna use it.
They use it like crazy, and that's, I think it's a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
The mistake we made was we didn't put a sidewalk on Pinecrest from Canberra to the bike path, because that gets a lot of foot traffic.
We're
Who paid for
trying,
the
though.
bike path?
We're still trying.
Who
There's
paid
like
for
a
that
small
bike path?
sidewalk
The
that just
town?
ends.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
developers-
developer.
We applied for a
It's a
grant, we just didn't
75 foot
get it.
right away in the
But we'll try
development.
again.
Yeah, so it was always set up so with
Small
a
sidewalk.
25 feet
On
was
the
on
back
the
of it.
side where the bike passed it, so we had a 50-foot right of way basically for Albuquerque and 25 feet for the bike path.
Oh, all right.
So it was always set up that way, and yeah, we built sections of it. The state paid, Roland got some funding for sections of it. Yep. I'll get done.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
And frankly,
me too.
we're lucky that it's, I guess it's one person in this case that's got all those tracts of land.
Yeah.
It just makes it cohesive.
I think it's good. I just,
And, hopefully the Board of Selectmen would approve that.
Yeah.
And basically.
I mean, if anybody's gonna develop, they gotta give something back.
Yeah.
It's just not
Yeah.
all taking. Just, you gotta do it. And it's no different when we built Firefly. I mean, we built the sidewalk to get to Albuquerque, and you see people coming up and people are walking on it, walking on it. It's a good thing.
Okay.
So I
Good
think it should be in.
Agreed.
What would the Board of Selectmen need for that?
I think they want to see probably
To
this
see it ahead
plan.
of time?
Yeah, do you want to come in and talk, or are you gonna go, or? Well, first of all, I think I have to understand something here. So pardon me if I'm slowing everybody down. You're saying as part of this project, are we going to make ordinances that they have to do this, put the sidewalk in?
We could, yeah.
Because you can't just, they're gonna.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to draft something.
Yeah,
So
I'll
that's
have,
what they
I'll
would
have
look
some,
at.
I'll have something for the next
He's already
meeting.
working
So
on
that's what the Board of Selectmen would need.
Right.
Probably
Yeah.
to look at that.
Yep.
I
They would
have
just have
your
to say they have
draft
to
of
maintain
one
it.
of your
Right.
ideas, so we can explain, just give them a visual maybe, right?
Right.
I don't know what the cost is. They'll probably have to look at that.
Well, they already
Us.
maintain the sidewalk out here. They plow it.
Right.
In the winter.
I know,
They
but
do.
they just want to understand the scope of it.
Yep.
It's just gonna be part of the project, but the state won't, as a developer, they won't let us put it in if it's not agreed.
Right.
But when they say maintain, they don't mean plow it.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, they do?
They do.
You have to plow it in the winter. Oh, wow. Okay, well,
And
It's a
they-
thing.
And it's ADA, right? And it's got the stormwater.
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that's
yeah.
all factored in,
Yeah.
right? So it's all,
But again, once it's built, the expense is just plowing it and
Yeah.
the landowner or the developer is gonna take care of it up in front of it.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be part of his property to maintain, but the town has to agree. They won't do that. They won't
Yep.
do it if it's.
that makes sense.
You
It's
want-
no different than when we built White Path in Albuquerque.
Yep.
The town maintained it.
Do they plow that in the winter?
Yeah, yeah. So they have somebody plow it.
Tells you how much I go out there in the winter.
So that would be the only thing that would, if the selectmen say no, then.
Yeah.
it wouldn't work, which I hope they do. I hope they say yes.
If the selectmen say no, so say we were to put a warrant article forward, the selectmen vote on that warrant article to recommend it.
No.
They don't do that for the planning board
No.
ones?
It goes
Just
to
the
town
planning board.
meeting.
Okay, so if the town accepts it,
You're gonna put it in your
Would
site
the
plan
board of-
regulations.
First, the planning board votes to take it to hearing. And then on the warrant, it'll say on the bottom if the planning board.
right, I just couldn't
recommends it.
remember if the board of selectmen
The selectmen
also did
don't,
that, okay.
Isn't this just gonna be part of the normal commercial?
Yeah.
district?
Yes.
It's gonna be on one of your requirements. for
Yes.
your
Right.
site plan.
Right.
does it have to have a condition that the other warrant articles we're talking about are approved?
No, because all these will be constructed to be freestanding warrant
Okay.
articles.
But that's okay. All
Yeah,
right,
that's
so get
good
it in
idea.
there. It's not conditionally that
Yep.
mixed use housing goes in. and
That's
out.
right. Yeah, yeah.
All right, no,
Deal with them
standalone is
separately.
probably better strategy.
You want me to come to a Board of Selectmen meeting to help?
Once we have a warrant article, yeah, if everyone wants to
I
come.
think the plan, I think,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I'll go, but I think the planning board needs. to-
Yeah, yeah. I do too.
I can do that.
Yeah, and I can turn around the draft language pretty quickly.
But after we.
But do we have to have
our
the
language.
public hearing and then we have to vote to send it on? Then it goes to the select board or?
It doesn't go to the selectmen formally at all. It's just
Okay.
for this conversation.
Okay.
We could have some language in front of them so they understand.
But should the planning board vote on it to send it to hearing first
Yeah.
before they go to the selectmen?
Because
That's just a choice. I mean,
well, they have to
it could go
approve they're
either
going to maintain it. If it
well, no,
passes-
no,
We're
because
saying
the,
that
the
question.
actual, this is really just to get their feedback. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what's going to happen is that as developments come in and they propose to construct within the state right away, the state is going to require an agreement
Mhm.
that's going to have to be signed
Mhm.
that the selectmen are going to have to approve.
Mhm.
So it's, the selectmen don't have to grant blanket approval now. It's going to be piece by piece by piece. Each time that sidewalk is proposed in the state right away, there's going to be a separate agreement and a separate vote on the part of Board of Selectmen.
It would
They
be
want
in our
that.
ordinances and they actually reject every single piece.
They could. The Board of Selectmen, the ordinance and the Board of Selectmen could still.
We need more pedestrian access.
Okay.
It's not all about cars anymore. It's,
Right.
you know, it's the word, I guess.
Right.
So once you get the Board of Selectmen's blessing, then you would basically take it to the state and the state would
And
essentially,
the developer, so when we go for our driveway permits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This sidewalk's gonna be on the
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to get that approved.
Right.
Yep.
And they're gonna, the only way they're gonna approve it is if the selectmen agree.
Yep.
to
To maintain.
maintain.
Right.
Okay.
It's all part of the
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
of getting your driveway permit from the state.
Right.
It'll be incorporated into that.
Yep.
And like I said, in some cases, it'll be on private property, in some cases, it'll be in state right.
Yeah.
We get, culvert, something might have to. I think from Albuquerque down to Warren's, it's probably gonna be in the state right away, because the poles are back far enough, and it depends where the poles hit. There's things, all the things you gotta take into consideration, but it'll be all designed. We'll design it, and just do it. I think it's,
Make the town a lot more attractive.
Yeah.
So we have a meeting on Monday and I'll bring it up because I go around and want to know what we're all doing, the roundtable.
Mhm.
Get it
oh,
in.
next Monday night.
Well, yeah, I believe 22nd.
Yeah, a minute.
I'll come in.
Sure.
I'll come in too. Yeah.
Full planning board.
Let me call Troy to get it on the agenda first. Well, no, but I can bring it up. No, I can still bring it up at the roundtable, but you might have to wait.
Yeah.
Let me call Troy tomorrow and see if you can get it.
Non-public.
Yeah. You just make sure they're aware that might happen.
Non-agenda item,
Oh,
non-agenda item.
non-agenda item.
Right.
Public input.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
What's next?
Everybody good?
Till next time.
I had one question. It's a quick one. Back to the prohibited uses. If we state any use not listed in a certain section is prohibited, does that mean the zoning board can't grant a variance?
No, they
Okay.
could still grant a variance.
Okay.
It
so
does
it's
send a
just to
stronger
clarify.
message though.
Okay. All right,
In
I
other
just
words,
wanted to
yeah.
know.
It's a way of saying it wasn't an oversight on our part.
Okay.
Is anything else, Jay, that you want to add?
No.
So I guess for next time, I guess you'll provide another draft.
Yes.
And including the language that we talked about. And, go from there, I guess. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. All right. So I guess that, so the next meeting for this will be, I'm losing my voice. December what?
20, I think.
20?
Look. Oops. 21st.
21st.
21st. Okay. So I guess we will continue our discussion at that time.
We'll throw in a little holiday cheer.
Bring the eggnog. All right.
But the next meeting is December 7th.
Right.
The next work session is
At the work session, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna do this off the cuff because I don't have a copy of the agenda in front of me.
It's up
But
on the
is it-
screen.
It's right there.
There you go. Look at Jay.
I don't have to do it off the cuff. Okay. It must be mental. I don't know. Let's see if I'm right. Let's see. Committee reports? Is it any reports of any committees? Kim, do you have anything?
Nothing to report, except the next Board of Selectmen meeting is Monday, November 22nd here in the Town Hall at 6:30 PM. And then as far as National Regional Planning Commission, the next full commissioner meeting is December 15th. That's a Wednesday. And have we determined where yet, or
NRPC.
you think it's going to be, okay, so 30 Temple Street in Nashua. That's 7:00 PM.
Let's see. Conservation met last Thursday at 7 here in Town Hall. The Capital Improvement Committee is meeting December 1st, as far as I know. Keep our fingers crossed.
Conservation's December 2nd.
The next conservation meeting is December 2nd. Okay.
Budget committee is starting the school budget review on Thursday, 7 PM,
Oh, where?
I believe. Yes, I believe it's town hall.
Yeah, well, next Thursday is Thanksgiving.
No, this Thursday.
Oh, this Thursday,
Yep, it's 18.
18th, okay.
Just so everyone's aware too, I know that we got a presentation, Conservation Commission got a presentation from the lower, NRPC on the Merrimack River corridor. So I guess the lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee is sort of putting input into the corridor plan. There's a Merrimack River corridor plan. If anyone's interested in, wanting to send their information, there's a survey that went out, I believe, and I think there's opportunity for comment on that. So I can send out information on that if anyone's interested. Okay, the approval of the November 2nd, 2021 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Have a good
thanks.
night.
Night.
Appreciate it. Anyone had an opportunity to look at those? Questions, concerns? And I'll entertain a motion to approve them if it's so the will of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
One second.
I have a second by Kate. Discussion. All those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
All right.
Those opposed, abstain.
That's it.
We got one abstain. Motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 1. Any other business? Joan, do you have anything?
I would like to bring up next time the sign ordinance, a couple simple changes, and I'll email Jay what those are.
Right. Jay, do you have anything?
I just want to, I think I brought it up before about for anybody who's interested in the Capitol Corridor Passenger Rail Project, there is a public meeting tomorrow via Zoom. It's a statewide meeting, so it'll be a good informational session. if you're
Yeah, it was
interested.
interesting because there was a lot of Facebook posts about where the rails were going. I was trying to talk to some of my old railroad buddies to find out what they were thinking too. So
So I can send you the link.
Yeah.
Short answer, though, what's proposed now is an extension of the existing commuter rail service from Lowell to Manchester with 2 stops in Nashua, 1 in Bedford, which would serve the airport,
Yep.
and 1 in downtown Manchester.
Interesting.
32 trains a day is what the current plan is. So
So those
32 what?
32 trains a day.
Really?
Yeah,
How
16
fast?
round trips. So that's pretty significant.
It's not any faster than it currently runs. Right.
Well, they don't
Up
currently
and
run
down
up to here yet.
But no, but
Amtrak.
I mean, it's already takes an hour from the closest T station into Boston.
It'll be over an hour, absolutely.
Okay.
Depending on obviously where you start. South Nashua, needless to say, will be
Yeah.
just over an hour.
I mean,
Not
it
like a
does.
high speed.
It would also depend on what is part of that deal. If they upgraded the track, you could
Yeah.
upgrade the speed of the trains depending on what's put in there, which would decrease the time to get into town. So I would assume that if they were going to do something like that, you'd want to up the speeds of the train, because what are you benefiting if riding the train if you're taking 2 hours to take a train versus an hour to take a car?
Yeah, and that's one of some things I'll talk about. It won't be 2 hours, but it's. I mean, again, from downtown Manchester, it's going to be more. You've got stops in between. Each stop takes time.
So you said there's going to be a Manchester, Bedford, and 2 Nashua stops.
And then to Lowell from there?
It'll continue on to Lowell, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it starts now.
From Nashua to Lowell without a stop.
Well, no, it's Nashua to Boston, so it won't.
To the North Station?
It won't stop in Lowell. There'll be a stop in Lowell, but you don't change trains in Lowell. It goes all the way to
Right,
um,
so straight
right,
straight in from, oh, well. that's
right
nice.
to North Station.
It wouldn't be nonstop, but it would be straight from Manchester, one train all the way into Boston.
Right.
You'd hit the stops on the Lowell line most likely, unless they were doing like a high rail from Manchester straight in, which they do some of those
Yeah,
trains.
but they're not. This will hit all the stops.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I'd like a link to that, please.
Absolutely. I'll send it out tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I lived in Exeter for years and I took that train many times. And I think it was an hour from Exeter to North Station.
And it's going to be the Litchfield station, if you will, is most likely for most people. No, it'll be the Bedford one,
Really?
because that's right at Ray Resort, right at exit 13.
Uh,
So that's a pretty straight shot. I mean, some people might choose to go to Nashua, but realistically, that would be your closest station
Where are
option.
the stops going to be in Nashua? Do you know? Okay.
One is going to be at Crown Street, which is east of downtown.
Yeah.
And the other one is, there's still 2 sites that they're looking at, but Pheasant Lane Mall is one option.
Wow.
And the other option is a site that's called the Dow site, the old Dow chemical site
Oh,
off Spipwick Road.
Huh.
So
yeah.
Interesting.
I'll send out the link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I have nothing else for this evening unless anyone else has anything else. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion. I have a motion. I have a
Second.
second. I have a second. Discussion. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained. Well, you're all out of luck. So 6-0. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening by television, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a safe holiday. Thank you.